I was about 9 or 10, and Dad decided to wainscot 3 sides of our home. And wainscot with brick. Dad has never laid brick, but he figured out, what he needed to do, and he wainscoted the house. And then when he got to the front porch, he got very artistic in the design and made crosses or T's, looked like a cross on one wall. But and then he was laying the brick for the flower beds, and he told me as a young lad, stay away from that string line. Well, I had to cross over it, and I messed it up. And I found out what a Rose of Sharon twig feels like. He was always a religious man, and he had toured Europe a little bit during the World War. He got to see some of the famous European churches, and being a religious man, he decided he wanted to change the medium and make it something that he can design himself. And so he decided to build reams out of plaster of Paris. But to get the plaster of Paris, he had to first carve all the statues and everything in lead. He was a cable splicer for 31 years, and he had to use these big lead sleeves around the joints for wherever he spliced the phone wires. So he was used to the lead, and he was comfortable with it. He knew how malleable it was. He knew how he could form it and shape it. So that's what started him using the lead as the medium for his end goal. He would carve the lead, push it in a piece of clay, then pour liquid plaster of Paris, let it dry, and then he would harvest it. But the Reims was his first, and it's my favorite. He swears it has over 10,000 individual pieces that he built and then glued together. Most of it was just plain old Elmer's glue, and they've stayed together all these decades with no problem. When he would complete a church, he would build a case for it. The first church, he hired Lustercraft to build the church, the plexiglass case. Well, it was very cost prohibitive. I mean, it was like $400 clear back in 65, 66. That was a lot of money. So after that, then he got to building his own cases. They're not as fancy and contoured as well, but they have protected his churches for all these years just sitting in his apartment. They've kept the dust off and the smoke off or whatever. And the cases themselves are just as fragile as the churches. They're one of a kind. Each one's unique. Now, most of them are copies of something original. Obviously Reims, and then he did Sagrada in Barcelona, then he did Zacatecas, Mexico, then he did the Disney Castle after he came down to Florida to visit us one time. Then he built his Bengalese castle, which is his own design, something he conceived. And the art world prefers that over the copy churches because it shows his own creative style. Well, Dad lived alone. He only saw Dana and I 2 days every 3 weeks. He didn't have a TV. He didn't have a radio. He didn't buy the newspaper. And he needed to do something. His 8-hour-a-day job did not fulfill him. He did the same job for 31 years. They tried to promote him, but he was not interested to get into management. And so he was bored. And since he was such a religious man, he just got interested in doing something to represent his faith. And he's always told me, what better architecture is there than some of these famous churches that have been built over the century? Well, the first and foremost thing is I want to try to share them with the world as much as possible. I am so proud of my father and what he accomplished. But keeping him in my house to myself doesn't honor him.